America, you're not ready for what just happened. Because something absolutely explosive went down this week. And at the center of it all, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, the rising star who's quickly become the Republican Party's worst nightmare. But this time, it wasn't just another MAGA mouthpiece she took down. It was Melania Trump. Yes, Melania Trump. And what Jasmine Crockett revealed, what she dropped in front of the cameras, under oath, with a whole country watching, sent shockwaves to the entire Trump empire. We're talking about a moment so powerful, so unexpected, that insiders say Melania herself collapsed emotionally, politically, maybe even physically, in the aftermath. Why? Because this bombshell didn't just touch on Donald's legal scandals. It exposed something much deeper, something Melania personally fought to bury. And once it was out, there was no going back. So the question now is, what did Jasmine Crockett say? What secrets were finally brought to light? And why did it hit Melania Trump harder than anyone ever expected? We're going to break down everything, from the build-up, to the betrayal, to the moment Jasmine dropped the hammer. You'll hear the quotes, the receipts, the reactions, and yes, the total spectacular meltdown that followed. But first, let's rewind a second, because this wasn't just some offhand comment during a hearing. This wasn't political theater. No, this was a culmination of months of quiet moves, hidden files, and silent betrayals happening right under the public's nose. And now, Jasmine Crockett has kicked the door wide open. Let's not pretend this moment came out of nowhere. For months, Americans have been watching the slow unraveling of Trump world. The indictments, the hush money, the desperate press conferences, the ever-changing stories. But Melania, she stayed silent. She didn't speak. She didn't tweet. She didn't stand by her husband, or leave him either. She just watched. And that silence, it only raised more questions. What did she know? What was she hiding? And why was she so desperate to stay out of the spotlight? Well, now we know. Because when Jasmine Crockett took the mic at that congressional hearing, she didn't just speak truth to power. She stripped the lies bare. And one name kept coming up again and again, hidden in the documents, buried in the financials, scrubbed from the reports. Melania Trump. That's right. Melania wasn't just a bystander in Trump's tangled web. She was part of it, according to Crockett's team. And this is where it gets wild. There are financial trails that connect Melania directly to hush money payments, hidden offshore accounts, and what Crockett called, quote, a shadowy scheme to protect the Trump brand at any cost. Let that sink in. While the nation was focused on Donald's criminal trials, Melania was allegedly helping move money in the background, creating distance, building plausible deniability, securing the family fortune while the empire collapsed around them. And you know what Jasmine said when she confronted it? She didn't raise her voice. She didn't scream. She didn't need to. She just looked dead into the camera and said, the American people deserve to know all the names on these documents, not just the ones the Trumps want you to see. Boom. Right then, the room froze. The air got thick. The MAGA Republicans on the panel, who had been laughing, interrupting, trying to derail Crockett all morning, suddenly fell silent. Even they knew she had the goods. So why was this such a devastating blow? Because for the first time, the First Lady wasn't untouchable anymore. Melania has always played the role of the outsider, the reluctant wife, the one who didn't want any of this. But according to Jasmine Crockett, that image was a carefully crafted lie, a disguise, a mask. Behind closed doors, Crockett claims, Melania was more involved than anyone realized, not in policy, but in protection, shielding Trump, shielding herself, building financial firewalls while America looked the other way. And when Jasmine Crockett revealed the evidence, Melania Trump's world, the silence, the secrecy, the carefully curated distance, collapsed. It was a political earthquake, one that left the entire Trump circle scrambling. Legal teams in panic mode, Republican strategists in chaos, social media spinning with wild theories and furious denials. But the damage was already done, because Crockett didn't just hint. She named names. She cited pages. She offered copies. She read the fine print out loud. And Melania's name was right there. So what happens now? That's the question that has Washington trembling. Because if Melania Trump gets pulled into the legal and financial investigations surrounding her husband, it's not just scandal, it's family implosion. The whole Trump brand was built on unity, wealth, and loyalty. If that crumbles, so does everything else. And Jasmine Crockett knows it. She's not just playing defense. She's not just reacting to Republican lies. She's going on offense, targeting the rot at its core, and refusing to look away, no matter how powerful the name on the documents is. That's why this moment matters. Because for once, it's not about political spin or partisan talking points. It's about truth, no matter who it implicates. And if Jasmine Crockett is right, if Melania Trump truly had her hands in the shadowy machinery of the Trump empire, then this isn't just another chapter in the Trump scandal. It's the beginning of the end. So buckle up, because this story is just getting started. And what comes next will shape the foundation of the Trump dynasty forever. Oh, understand how we got here, how Jasmine Crockett ended up shaking the entire Trump dynasty with one stunning revelation. We need to take a step back, because this wasn't a random outburst. It wasn't accidental. This was years in the making. And it starts with two very different women. Melania Trump, the elusive former First Lady, and Jasmine Crockett, the bold new voice in Congress who's making the GOP sweat bullets every time she grabs a mic. Let's start with Melania. Now, you probably know her as a quiet, distant figure standing next to Donald Trump during his chaotic presidency. She rarely spoke. She didn't engage with the media. And when she did, it was controlled, rehearsed, carefully staged. Melania branded herself as a reluctant First Lady, the one who didn't want the spotlight, who didn't ask for politics, who just wanted to raise her son and be left alone. But behind that polished exterior, there were whispers that she wasn't just sitting on the sidelines. She was pulling strings behind the scenes, not in the West Wing, but in the family empire, quietly working with lawyers, advisors, and trusted confidants to protect the Trump name and her own interests from the legal firestorm brewing around them. See, while Donald Trump was ranting on Truth Social and rallying MAGA crowds, Melania was vanishing from public view. For nearly 2 years, she disappeared from the political world almost entirely. No interviews, no public statements, no campaign appearances, nothing. And for a while, people stopped asking questions. But then came the investigations. We're talking about hush money payments, classified documents, foreign business entanglements, shell companies, untraceable wire transfers, and more. Each headline more explosive than the last. Donald Trump became the first former president in history to face 4 criminal indictments. And as the walls started closing in, Melania stayed silent. That silence, however, wasn't accidental, and it wasn't meaningless. Enter Jasmine Crockett, a freshman congresswoman from Texas. Crockett is everything the Trump machine hates. Loud, fearless, unapologetically black, and unshakably honest. She's become one of the most visible Democratic firebrands in Congress. Not because she craves the spotlight, but because she knows how to wield it. Every time a Republican tries to play games at a hearing, Crockett cuts through their noise like a blade. Every time someone lies, she fact-checks them live. And every time the GOP tries to distract from Trump's growing list of scandals, she drags the conversation right back to accountability. And over the last 6 months, she's had one target on her radar that most Democrats were too cautious to touch. Melania Trump. See, Jasmine wasn't just interested in Donald's crimes. She wanted to know who was helping him cover them up. And her instincts told her, follow the money. So that's exactly what she did. She dug into shell companies tied to the Trump organization. She subpoenaed financial reports from political action committees, business trusts, and real estate LLCs. She asked sharp, pointed, specific questions that made Republicans visibly uncomfortable on camera. And the deeper she went, the more one name kept popping up in the margins. Melania. It wasn't always direct. Sometimes it was a signature on a document. Other times, it was a wire transfer to a private holding account. But Crockett noticed a pattern. Money moving into quiet corners. Financial statements with her initials. Properties quietly transferred into her name right before legal action dropped on Donald. And suddenly, the picture started to change. Melania wasn't just a bystander. She was part of the financial machine. And Jasmine Crockett? She was about to call it all out. But let's be clear, this wasn't just about money. This was about power, influence, an illusion of innocence that Melania Trump had hidden behind for years. Because while the public saw her as different from Donald, less political, more graceful, more private, behind the scenes, according to Crockett's findings, she was allegedly securing the Trump fortune for herself and her son, even if the empire around them crumbled. And why wouldn't she? With Donald facing federal prison time, with Trump Tower's value plummeting, with MAGA world unraveling at the seams, Melania was reportedly working to isolate, shield, and redirect assets before the lawsuits caught up. So now we get to the hearing, the one that changed everything. It was supposed to be another tense, chaotic oversight committee session. Republicans yelling about Hunter Biden, Democrats pushing back. The usual circus. But Jasmine Crockett wasn't playing games. She came armed with documents, with receipts, and with a purpose. She started slow, asked a few questions about business filings. Then she mentioned a holding company based in Slovenia. The Republicans shifted uncomfortably. Then she said the name, Melania. Boom. The room froze. Jasmine began reading from documents that suggested Melania Trump had been listed as a silent trustee on multiple financial vehicles connected to Trump campaign fundraising. That means she wasn't just involved. She allegedly had direct oversight of the money. And where did that money go? To private real estate, to legal settlements, to untraceable accounts, all under the radar, all while Trump was asking his supporters to donate their last dollar. The hypocrisy was jaw-dropping. And Jasmine Crockett wasn't done. She turned to the panel and said, if Melania Trump had nothing to do with Trump's legal schemes, why was her name on the money? Why was her name on the trust? Why was she listed as a beneficiary of assets that were quietly moved during criminal investigations? Silence. Republicans had no answer. They didn't even try to defend her, because this wasn't about opinions. It wasn't political spin. It was evidence. And it was all about to come crashing down. That's how we got here. That's why Melania Trump, who had spent years pretending to be above the chaos, suddenly became the focus of the biggest political bombshell of the year. Because Jasmine Crockett saw through the mask. And she wasn't afraid to rip it off in front of the entire country. The hearing room was dead silent. You could hear paper shuffle, chairs shift, breaths held. Jasmine Crockett wasn't yelling. She didn't need to, because what she held in her hands was louder than any speech. Evidence, verified financial documents, transaction histories, trust filings, corporate ownership structures that, piece by piece, pointed back to the one person no one expected to be involved, Melania Trump. And Jasmine didn't just show them. She read them, slowly, deliberately, one entry at a time. This LLC, registered in New York in 2020, lists Melania Trump as a sole trustee. She read, her voice sharp, deliberate. The Republicans on the panel, visibly shaken. J.D. Vance shuffled his notes, looking like he wanted to vanish. Marjorie Taylor Greene tried to interrupt, but Jasmine cut her off cold. Are you denying these documents, Congresswoman? Because I'd be very interested in hearing your explanation. Greene went quiet, because there wasn't an explanation. This wasn't rumor. This wasn't speculation. This was black and white paperwork, filed in official registries, some even notarized, all tracing a web of financial maneuvering back to Melania Trump. The documents showed that Melania was listed as a beneficiary on a trust that received over $12 million in diverted campaign donations, money that had supposedly been raised to stop the steal. Properties in Florida and Slovenia were purchased under shell companies where Melania was listed as the only officer. High-dollar legal settlements paid to 2 former Trump aides were issued from accounts bearing her name. This wasn't just a technicality. It was a pattern. Jasmine raised her voice for the first time. So while Donald Trump was telling his followers to donate their last dollar, while he was crying witch hunt and pretending to be the victim, Melania Trump was allegedly moving money into private accounts, securing property overseas, and covering legal fallout. And then came the line that blew up the internet. That's not a first lady. That's a financial co-conspirator. You could feel the air leave the room. Social media exploded. Within minutes, clips of Jasmine's statement were trending on every platform. TikTok, Twitter, or whatever Elon Musk is calling it this week. Instagram, Facebook. Pundits scrambled to respond. Conservative media went into spin mode. MAGA forums lit up with panic. Because the narrative had changed permanently, Melania Trump was no longer untouchable. She wasn't a graceful, detached outsider anymore. She was now part of the machine. And Jasmine Crockett? She had just yanked back the curtain for everyone to see. But the Congresswoman wasn't done. She turned to the panel again. I want to be clear. I'm not accusing Melania Trump of committing a crime. That's for the Department of Justice to decide. But I am saying this. She was not a passive bystander. She was not just a wife. She was an active participant in building the Trump defense infrastructure, financial, legal, and reputational. Bang. Right then, word came in. Melania Trump's legal team had just requested an emergency closed-door briefing with congressional counsel. What does that tell you? They weren't denying it. They were panicking. And it wasn't just her. Reporters outside the hearing room spotted Trump insiders on their phones, pacing. Staffers whispering. Even MAGA loyalists seemed stunned, because Jasmine Crockett had done something no one expected. She didn't just attack Donald Trump. She pierced the armor surrounding him. The image of Melania, the silent partner, the reluctant wife, it was shattered. And now, the questions came pouring in. Why was Melania's name on accounts linked to dark money? Why were foreign properties tied, the shell companies only she controlled? Why was she listed on a trust that paid out legal expenses? And most damning of all, what did she know, and when did she know it? Now, let's be clear, Jasmine Crockett isn't the type to throw around wild allegations. That's what the GOP does. No, she brought facts. And that's what made this moment so devastating. Because she didn't need to speculate. She showed the receipts. And the reaction from Trump world? Total silence. No tweets. No true social rants. No angry videos from Donald. No PR statement from Melania's office. Nothing. Just silence. And you know what that tells us? They're cornered. Because once you follow the money, you follow the truth. And the truth, as Jasmine made clear, is this. Melania Trump was not some innocent bystander. She was involved, and she benefited. And if the Department of Justice follows up, this could be the most shocking twist yet in the Trump family saga. Let's pause here. Can we talk about how bold this was? Most Democrats wouldn't dare go near Melania. They'd play it safe. Focus on Trump himself. Try to avoid looking personal. But not Jasmine. She understood something vital. Power protects itself behind women like Melania. The graceful wife narrative? It's a shield, a tool, a way to humanize a corrupt empire. And Jasmine? She was done pretending. She didn't care about decorum. She cared about justice. And in doing so, she sent a message to every woman hiding behind powerful men. If you help them lie, cheat, and steal, you are not innocent. You are accountable. This wasn't just a takedown. It was a reckoning. So now, as the media tries to play catch-up, as Republicans scramble to change the subject, as the Trumps retreat into silence, Jasmine Crockett stands exactly where she started. Unafraid, unbothered, unapologetic. Because while they try to spin, she's focused on the truth. And this truth just shattered the First Lady myth forever. The moment Jasmine Crockett stepped away from that microphone, everything changed. Not just for Melania Trump, not just for the MAGA elite, but for the entire illusion that had protected the Trump family for years. Because Jasmine didn't just expose shady finances or questionable paperwork. She exposed a lie. The lie that Melania Trump was above it all, that she was simply a silent, uninterested spouse caught in the chaos of her husband's collapse. But now, America knew better. Within 24 hours of the hearing, the political aftershocks were seismic. CNN's top headline read, Melania named in bombshell documents. Crockett sparks new legal questions. MSNBC aired the full clip hourly, analyzing every quote, every name, every dollar figure Jasmine cited. And Fox News? They went into full crisis mode. Suddenly, their anchors weren't praising Melania's grace and elegance. They were demanding answers, trying to spin, trying to distance her from the scandal even as the walls closed in. And as for Melania, she disappeared, vanished from her usual haunts in Florida. No dinners, no charity appearances, no photo ops at Mar-a-Lago. Reporters swarmed the estate, but staff had only one line: no comment. That silence, it wasn't just media strategy. It was collapse. Not physical, necessarily. Those sources close to the Trump said Melania was deeply shaken and completely blindsided by how hard Crockett came at her. But politically, publicly, legally, Melania Trump had collapsed under the weight of the truth. See, this is what happens when you build your image on lies. When you hide behind silence, behind your husband, behind a curated persona, and someone like Jasmine Crockett shows up with facts. You crumble. And that's exactly what happened. The Trump legal team, once obsessed with fighting Donald indictments, was now scrambling to protect Melania. New subpoenas were rumored. DOJ investigators began quietly reviewing the documents presented by Crockett. Senators started whispering about spousal involvement and whether it could change the legal landscape of the Trump cases. This was no longer just a scandal. It was a family implosion. And at the center of it all, Jasmine Crockett. The woman the GOP underestimated, the one they mocked, interrupted, dismissed, and now she had just taken down the image of Melania Trump with nothing but truth, preparation, and courage. That courage mattered, because let's not pretend it was easy. Taking on Donald Trump is one thing. He's loud, obnoxious, and practically invites conflict. But Melania, she was sacred to the MAGA myth. To question her was to question the entire illusion of the Trump fairy tale. And that's exactly what Jasmine did. She didn't shout. She didn't insult. She simply pulled back the curtain and said, this is who's really benefiting behind the scenes. This is who's being protected. This is who's escaping accountability while the rest of us pay the price. And the American people, they listened. Polls taken just days after the hearing showed a sharp dip in Melania Trump's favorability, even among moderate conservatives. Independent voters said they were shocked and angry to learn about her alleged financial role. One voter summed it up perfectly. We were told she was a victim. Turns out she was part of the plan. That single sentence captures everything Jasmine Crockett exposed. Because this isn't just about one person. It's about a pattern, a system, a political dynasty built on deception, protected by distraction, and held together by image. And now, that image is shattered. But let's give Jasmine her flowers. She didn't do this for clout. She didn't do it for headlines. She did it because it was right. Because while Republicans were wasting time defending insurrectionists, attacking Hunter Biden, and pushing conspiracy theories, Jasmine Crockett stayed laser focused on the truth. And the truth led her to Melania. What does that tell us? That the era of letting powerful people hide behind polished images is over. That if you're going to play the game, if you're going to move the money, sign the papers, build the empire, you don't get to pretend you're innocent. You own the consequences. And Jasmine Crockett, she's making damn sure of that. So what's next? That's the million-dollar question. Will the DOJ officially open a probe into Melania Trump's role in Trump finances? Will more whistleblowers come forward with inside knowledge? Will other Democrats now have the spine to follow Crockett's lead? Time will tell. But one thing is crystal clear. The days of Melania Trump sitting silently behind her husband, immune to scrutiny, are over. Jasmine Crockett tore down the veil, and America saw what was behind it. And now, there's no going back. So if you've been wondering whether anyone in Washington still has the guts to speak truth to power, look no further. Because Jasmine Crockett just walked into the lion's den, took the mic, and blew the lid off the entire Trump myth. With poise, precision, and fire. And Melania Trump? She wasn't ready.